if we're at 20%, what does that do to how you prioritize system safety beyond just rail and what it means to transportation as a whole?
We're a safety agency, and everything we do is prioritized first and foremost around safety, and that also means that when our activities are cut or suspended or impacted by some of these issues, that affects our ability to meet our safety mission. If we think about the aviation side of that, for example, we'd be looking at a hiring freeze, in effect, for our whole operations and facilities workforce. That includes controllers, includes safety inspectors, and there's some experience of this in the past from moments like the 2013 sequester. That was just a 5% reduction and led to furloughs, which of course are going to have an impact. If we were, we talked about rail, I would point to our Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, PHMSA. I don't see how they could conduct the current pace of field inspections with those kinds of cuts. In fact, we estimate about 2,000 fewer days would be dedicated to inspecting hazardous liquid and natural gas pipeline facilities and LNG export facilities, as well as a diminished ability to respond to hazmat incidents, which they often do. For example, while I think it's widely known that Federal Rail Administration personnel were on the ground within hours in East Palestine, I'm not sure everyone is aware that PHMSA personnel were there too. These are the kinds of activities that could be impacted. There would be a reduced workforce and hiring freeze at NHTSA, which of course makes sure that our vehicles are safe. Transit would be affected. There's no part of our transportation system or our safety mission that I don't think we'd be touched in some way by these levels of cuts.
Delve a little deeper on PHMSA and just what resources are necessary, and forget the issue of cuts. You know, in a perfect world, what is it that we need? What numbers do we need to get to enhance rail safety to the point where it's never going to be foolproof, but we can help overcome the numbers that we're facing now?
Well, for PHMSA, we're requesting $387.3 million and 690 positions, and that is spread across pipeline safety, hazardous material safety, emergency preparedness grants, and that's another area I would say comes into play often when you have incidents like what happened in East Palestine, because we found that many of the first responders who were involved in that response had been trained thanks to federally funded PHMSA programming. And then, of course, you have the FRA side of the house, which is seeking funding that would allow FRA to continue to expand and develop its safety programs. Since arriving, this administration established a process of doing detailed safety audits on individual railroads to check for compliance issues. And that kind of proactive work is something we would love to be able to do more of, even within the authorities we have. Provided we have appropriate staffing. Then, as I mentioned in my testimony, of course, we're also interested in further authorities that might come by way of the bipartisan dialogue right now about rail safety legislation.
And where are rail partners at with this, with what their responsibilities are and what they still need to do?
Well, I think they could be doing a lot more, and I've called on them to do a lot more. I will say, after I called on them to participate, for example, in the confidential close call reporting system, which enables whistleblowers at railroad companies to identify safety issues without fear of reprisal, they did respond, and all 7 of the Class 1 railroads committed to join that program. So that's a step that I do want to recognize. But we would like to see a lot more. For example, more proactive work to notify communities when hazardous materials are coming into their jurisdictions aboard freight trains. And while we will continue calling on industry to do the right thing, I think ultimately, rather than merely asking, we need to make sure we have the right combination of legislation and enforcement activity to compel them to do the right thing.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.